Falcons Audible presented by AT&T is back. We are back after 3 straight Falcons victories. Not only 3 straight victories, but 3 straight divisional victories. We told you we're going to come here, we're going to bring the fire whether we win or lose. But it's a little easier to bring the fire when you win.
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah, it is.
When you sit on top of the division and you're feeling real good about yourself. But what does that mean? Okay, guys, let me ask you that question. What does that mean, okay? You end up winning 3 straight divisional games, Arch. You get yourself atop the NFC South. It's still early in the season. What does it mean?
Well, I think it means a ton, Rack. I think that when you start looking at your 3 and you get 6 division games, you're 3-0 in the division. You talk about a leg up. Then all of a sudden you start looking at the NFC. And then that next criteria as far as playoffs. You're talking playoffs, not in week 6. But you're a third of the way through the season, essentially, okay? So now all of a sudden you start kind of stacking. Can you stack wins? And where are those wins stacked? NFC stacked wins, NFC South stacked wins. That's money in the bank. And who doesn't want some money in the bank? I mean, we all want a savings account, right? Y'all want that checking account to look good when you look at it. Well, that checking account looks pretty good right now.
That's right. That's right. DJ, after a 1-2 start, you start thinking, even though it's early in the season, there's still plenty of time left, but like the cards start stacking against you, right? You start looking at the stats. You start looking at how many teams that start 1-2, that start 1-3 actually make it to the postseason. And those percentages dip dramatically, right? But then they turn the switch, right? Everything kind of settled into place a little bit. Offense has kind of found its groove over the last 3 games. And I saw something scrolling at the bottom of the screen the other day about power rankings. And this was before the completion of the Panthers game, and it had Falcons at 10th in the NFL in power rankings. Funny how things change after a few weeks, huh?
Yeah, and I think I've seen something similar. I saw as high as 7 for the Falcons as far as what you see. But, I mean, the great thing about it is they've been able to put it on display in front of the entire country. And they've been obviously playing on these high-profile games Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night. They've had chances to showcase who they are. And it's not just talk anymore, because I think when we came to the season, we all talked about all the new additions and how they will all how it would come together, and how quickly could they come together was the other part of it. And I think you watch that first game and everybody's like, whoa, hold on. This may be the same old what we've seen the last few years. We just gave this guy $180 million and we can't get a touchdown. And then all of a sudden, like you mentioned, he throws for 500. Then the next week you run for 200. And you're seeing all these pieces come together. You get Judon, you get Jesse. I mean, you got all these different pieces that are playing so well together, and then people can see it, actually watch it, and see how these games finish. And I think the biggest part is the way they have finished these games. And I think that's a big part of it too, because if you're a true Falcons fan, you've seen over the years how you've had a number of opportunities to be in this same position if you finish ball games. And now you didn't just do it 1 week. You've done it 2, 3, 4 weeks, and you've been consistent with it, and that's a big part of changing the narrative of who this team is, they're playing better, and they've done it over the years, but finishing these ball games has been a big part of how people view this team now, because even versus teams that maybe they thought weren't going to be able to beat them, they've done it at the end and been able to finish.
So that's interesting, too, and I want to ask you guys. There's always a conversation. It seems like the conversation has come up a number of times. Okay, once Kirk gets up to speed and Zach gets up to speed, offense, what is your identity on offense? And then there's this whole being able to determine who you are on the offensive side of the football. You just talked about you just dropped a 500 spot on Tampa. You just dropped a 200 spot rushing the football on Carolina. Now all of a sudden, if I'm trying to prepare, and let's go to Seattle this weekend. I'm trying to prepare. You only got so many hours to prepare.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you looking at from an identity? And I think you just struck the identity, Shock, is they're finishers. You can, no matter what it takes, they're going to finish. They're going to come down the stretch and go find what they need to do to finish the game, whether it's salt a game away like they did last week, or find a way to win a game in the clutches with throwing the football.
Yep.
And how about the defense? There's so much conversation about the offense. How about the defense and their identity of being able to finish?
No doubt.
They finished the last couple of weeks as well. So I think that now all of a sudden, from me, if somebody asked me what's the identity of the Falcon team, they're finishers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we're at here
And
after 6 weeks, right?
That's the identity that you would want.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you could sit here and say we're a throwing team, we're a running team, we're a balanced team. If somebody says that team finishes, boy, that's a pretty good identity.
Yeah.
And I like that, Arch. I mean, I think it's a great observation. If you had to ask me what the identity of this team was, I would say last Sunday against Carolina is who I think they should be. Is the team that has that balance, that they can, when they want to, run for 200 yards. They got two backs in the backfield and offensive line that they are fully capable of doing that. Should I sit here and say that they can do it every week? No. This is the National Football League, right?
Sure.
You're going to play against some really stout defenses in this league. But that's, to me, what they're capable of.
Right.
And you can't sit here and say that we're going to put it on Kirk's shoulders to throw for 300, 400, 500 yards every week, right? But the fact that Kirk has shown that he can do that, and he will do that, and he'll put the team on his shoulders if need be, is pretty encouraging.
The other part that we got to give a lot of credit to is Zach Robinson. I think you look at, we talk about throwing for 5, rushing for 2. I think whatever the game calls for, that's what he puts on display. And for so many years, we talk about, okay, if this play works, why don't we ever come back to it? Or why don't we keep doing this? Well, if they give you something, guess what? You keep doing it. And I think Zach's done such a good job of creating that mode where, okay, well, they're giving us the pass game. Well, you got to force the run game. We can still run the football we want to, but if we're having so much success throwing the rock, why go away from it? Oh, this past week, Tyler Algier was down freaking hill. Bijan Robinson was downhill. I mean, tough physical runs on the goal line, down there inside the 5-yard line, third down, you run the rock. That speaks volumes for how he feels about his team. And then in that moment, this game called for, let's be a team that can run the football, and they did that.
I asked you guys about my opening question about this, like, what does it mean? And the reason why I said that is the Falcons have started 3-0 in the division before. I believe last year, right, Arch? Did they start 3-0 in the division last year? And we saw how things finished, right? And you mentioned changing the narrative, DJ. I think it's a great thing to say that this organization, these players, this new coaching staff have to change the narrative of what it was previously, right? Sometimes getting off to a hot start, not able to finish the season, okay? And the reason why I said, what does it mean? It means that you put yourself, in my opinion, in a really good position at this point in the season, and you've got some momentum and you've got some confidence, but now you got to go win the next game. And it's that whole like 24-hour rule. Like, let's celebrate, let's enjoy this for 24 hours. But just because the Seattle Seahawks team is coming off 3 straight losses doesn't mean that you've arrived and that you've automatically won this game. So before we get into Seattle, let's talk about this one a little bit more, Arch. And first game this season, after 5 straight games that were decided by 1 score, 8 points or less, finally get a more comfortable victory. Going into this one, even though every team is in the National Football League has professionals on it, a 1-4 Carolina team, you're feeling like you got to win this game. This is one of those must-win situations. You could say that every single week,
sure.
But when you're facing a 1-4 Carolina team and you're trying to remain atop the division, it's a must-win game. And it was a little bit like I had this feeling like they're kind of letting Carolina hang around for a little bit, and then the second half, the finish was a lot different. What were some of the key turning points for you in this game that allowed Atlanta to escape with a little bit more of a comfortable victory?
I think that their ability to answer was part of it early on. I thought that, you had 2 3-and-outs to start the game. Neither team got off to a very good start offensively. First, Atlanta gets pressure. Richie Grant comes on a blitz, and Andy Dalton throws a ball that almost gets picked off in that first series of downs. So you go the other side of it, and Kirk doesn't seem very settled into the game. Makes a couple of really kind of poor reads to where he throws the football. But you got an inkling because on second down, Bijan Robinson pounded one out for about 6 or 7 yards. You thought, well, wait a minute, there's a little something there. But then he threw it on the other 2 downs, and he looked a little unsettled. Carolina gets it, goes right down the field and scores. What does Atlanta do? Gets it, goes right down the field and scores. And I thought that was the key. And again, give Carolina credit too. They did a good job of answering a few drives, but it was Atlanta's ability to limit their opportunities in the red zone. They only got 3 red zone opportunities. Atlanta had 8 red zone opportunities. 8. Right? Now, 4 of 8 is not – now, let's take away the last one. Say 4 of 7 because the last one's a kneel down. When Clark hits the ground at the bottom, and stops the game. It doesn't allow the defense to get back on the field, which I thought was a cool play. We can talk about that. But anyway, 4 or 7 in the red zone. Got to be better there. You'd like to finish, one Younghoe Koo field goal, not 3 of them. But But I thought that was the key for me in the game. And the sequences of, Zach Harrison's block kick was huge. I mean, obviously AJ's interception at the end of the game was a big-time play. But I just thought that their ability to answer when Carolina did something offensively, whether it was a field goal or moved the ball, they were able to answer. And then the defense shuts the door. Carolina had 3 possessions in the fourth quarter, all ended in turnovers. An interception, downs, and a turnover.
Yep.
An interception.
Yeah, and DJ, I mean, it's one of those deals where, football's a game of momentum. And just like Arch was talking about, like there were some times where you felt like maybe Carolina had a little bit of momentum. But it's like, how do you respond, not just as an offense, but as a team when the other team has supposedly taken a little bit of the momentum? But Atlanta was able to do that, just kind of like seize it right back on their side. Regain the confidence, if you will, among the rest of the team. What kind of plays stuck out for you that were some turning points in the game?
You know what? I just look at how consistent they were on offense. And you're talking about you have 11 possessions in the game, and you scored on 7 of them. That's not including the first 3 and out that Arch just talked about, the fumble that they called by Ray, and then the 2 kneel downs. Other than that, you were consistently moving the football up and down the field. And I thought that put a lot of pressure on Carolina. It put a lot of pressure on them to respond as well. So I think you were the team that was the more aggressor in this ball game. Even if they made some plays throughout the game, it always felt like you were in a good spot. And the defense made it hard. And I think that's the other part about it, too, that I look at it as this defense is forcing teams to go earn it. Like, it's not just, okay, I'm going to throw a deep ball, here's a 70-yard catch, and we're in the end zone. They're making these guys go full field goal. I think they had maybe 4 or 5 drives of 7 or 8 plays or more where they had to go try to get points. That's forcing them to go earn it. And then offensively, you being consistent enough to put drives together that keeps your defense off the field, but also you're sustaining drives and getting everybody involved in it. So I thought just their ability to be the aggressor in this ball game was a big part of their success, but also allowing this team to show, okay, we can do a lot of different things in a lot of different ways, and now you have to be the team that has to respond to us.
6 of 12 on third down, which with 50% is good. It's winning football, obviously, right? And we talked about the first 3 games was a struggle on third down. I think the fact that they had 12 opportunities shows us that the running game showed up, right? And let's talk a little bit about that running game, because it was easy for us to talk about Kirk in the passing game last week after the Buccaneers. But we knew coming into this season that we had a veteran offensive line that was locked up, experienced, and we had arguably the best backfield in the National Football League. Bijan is already emerged to be one of the most electric playmakers in the National Football League, and you got a Tyler Algier who just kind of sits back there, does what he does, is ready to run over people when his number is called.
The bowling ball of razor blades, as I referred to him as.
Yes. So, Arch, like, how encouraging was it for you to see, like, that run game kind of dominate, if you will, just like the fact that it continued to break tackles, found ways to slide through holes, and it was almost like every time it was picking up 6, 7, 8 yards, whatever they needed, they were able to do it on the ground.
Well, I can tell you what a quarterback does. Wow, that is so nice. I mean, because you look up and it's 2nd and 4, it's 2nd and 5, it's 2nd and 3, to your point. That was outstanding. I thought that, getting back to one of our original points about finishing, they had 3 rushing touchdowns in this game, and you didn't just run it in from 1 yard out. Bijan ran in from a couple of times outside the 5-yard line and powered it in. Really good blocking on the perimeter and shoved it in the end zone with that physicality. That really makes you feel good as a quarterback as well. But now all of a sudden, think about what it opens up for Zach Robinson. If you're running the football like that and you want to take your shots, the play action shots or whatever you want to take, now there's some credibility to it, because linebackers are being harped on the sideline when they get off the field and they just ran. You run 11 plays in a drive and 8 of them are run plays, and you shove it in the end zone. You can bet what the defensive coordinator's talking about when that defense gets to the sideline. Guys, we got to swell up against the run. I got to come with run blitzes. I got to come with run dogs. Now all of a sudden those linebackers are tangled up in the run blocking, and then ultimately play action pass and blocking, and you throw behind them. So there are so many things that it breathes life into. And one of it, and a good bit of it, and I know this might be your original point, is the offensive line wants to be able to come off the ball and shorten the other people's necks on the other side of the football. They want to come off, and that breathes life into them. That gives them confidence. And that's the thing for a quarterback is you always want guys to feel confident in their ability to do their job, whether it's a receiver, a lineman, whatever it is. And that's what the run game does for the offensive line.
And I'll add a little more to it is the offensive line, big part of obviously they have to be a big part. There were times where you saw Drake London inserting inside or Kirk telling him to come down and point, you got this guy. Mm-hmm. And then the multiple ways that I thought Zach Robinson got to some of these runs. There was a wham block by Charlie Warner one time coming down and whamming the defensive tackle. I mean, you got counters that they get Bijan and Tyler on the outside. You got outside stretch zone, which that's a staple of this team. But it was tight ends, it was receivers. You see Ray blocking downfield. You see everybody involved in the run game. And as we know, the only way to get the run game going and for it to be successful is if you're getting those guys on the second and third level as well. So give a lot of credit to the O-line, a bunch of great combo, double blocks, getting up to linebackers. Then you got receivers filling in, going to get the most dangerous. I mean, there's so many things that you watch in entirety and you say, man, this when you turn on the tape, a defense is going to be like, well, them dudes, they're going to come in there, they're going to try to knock your head off too, just like the offensive lineman. So it was fun to watch, and the receivers get a lot of credit for the things they do with the football, but how about what they do without it is a big part too.
Yeah, the ancillary piece of that was how many untimely penalties have we gotten? And we got another one in here, and there's a phantom holding call on Chris Lindstrom in the game. I've looked at the tape 3 times and I can't find it. He engages the linebacker slides off, and Chris stumbles and falls on the back of his legs. And so they called it holding, which brought back a play. That was down in the red zone as Atlanta was trying to punch one in. But for the most part, you eliminated that. And to me, that's an indication of Coach Ledford working with those guys on technique, hand placement, all that kind of stuff, turning guys loose if you're on the edge. A lot of those edge blocks, when we talk outside zone, it's about how long can you hold and then get off of them, right? Mm-hmm. And another piece that you mentioned, Warner, you mentioned London. Kyle Pitts had a really good game in this game from a blocking standpoint. He had 3 grabs for 70 yards or whatever it was. He had the big play down the sideline.
Back-to-back weeks. Right?
Yeah, he did a really good job blocking in game. In fact, I thought he got a little charge. I saw him pump his fist one time when the bowling ball of knives went inside of him. He got a block on the defensive end. It wasn't a linebacker. He was locked up with a big guy, and he used the technique right. His hands were inside, and then he turned him loose. But Algier blows by, and I could see Kyle pump his fist, in really enjoying his job right there on that play. So I thought he deserves some credit as well.
I mean, it's the fans and people watching and everything, they want to see the ball in the air. They want to see the completions, but like football gurus will tell you that when you start pounding it at somebody, it is a fun time, right? Everybody. And to your point, I mean, I know you guys want to sling it as quarterbacks, but sometimes it's kind of nice to like turn around and hand it off and then just look over and just watch people just boom, 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 seeing your guys just working their way down the field.
We don't mind second and 4th, 3rd and 3 either. That makes it easy too. We got everything turned up.
Yeah, and think about you had no sacks in this game given up. And I think Kirk was credited being hit 3 times in the game. Now, they were around him a few times, what made it uncomfortable, but he was knocked to the ground 3 times or hit 3 times. I think that's another piece to the run game. If you're running the football that hard, that slows everybody down up front to be able to get to your quarterback and knock your quarterback around. So that's just another ancillary piece to it.
All right, so let's not sit here and focus all on the offense, guys. Let's talk a little bit about the defense. And Arch, you kind of mentioned it. I'm going to throw this out to you guys, and I'm going to let you take it wherever you'd like to go. A.J. Terrell. First interception since the 2021 season. It actually ended up being in 2022, January 2nd of 2022. However, it was in the 2021 season. I think it was 37 games for A.J. Terrell since his last interception. So it's good to see him get his hands on the football again. And then, Art, you mentioned it. Clark Phillips with the interception on the previous drive. And I got to give him a lot of credit. I'm not sure I would have fell down inside the 5-yard line.
My first one,
I mean, you're looking right at a pick 6.
First ever pick.
But think about the unselfish nature of that, knowing that he slides down in the field of play, and now you got kneel downs, and you don't score the touchdown and put another 7 points on the board, but their offense comes back on the field, right? Yeah. They're probably not getting back in the game, but there's no chance of anybody else really getting hurt.
Right.
And you were able to just kind of salt the game away with some kneel downs. So I just wanted to throw up the lob. This is like I'm the setter in volleyball, and I just put it up for you.
No, I like the crossover dribble move. You hang it for shock, and he comes in and rams it home.
Okay, so you like the alley-oop dunk instead. Okay,
early
alley-oop
like
dunk. Take it whatever way you want, Shock.
You know what? This defense has, really been fun to watch. You look at so many ways they are able to get to a lot of different packages. And the things in this ball game, I remember there was a play on, I think it was like 3rd and 8 or something, and you got Caden Ellis and Matthew Judon working on a ET stunt together. And how often you see that? We've talked about Caden Ellis being a guy that can rush, and his main job is to take two, but Judon comes around, that guard has to come off to Judon, and now Caden Ellis gets the pressure and forces the ball out of Andy Dalton's hands as soon as he wants to be. Little things like that, I think, is what allows this defense to play at the level that it does. And I think Jimmy Lake's doing a good job of being able to get these guys in spots where they can be successful, where these guys can, you understand what they can do best. And I think Arch mentioned it last week where we talked about some of the young guys, I mean, not the young guys, but some of the small guys putting their hat on people. When you're watching these guys be as physical, you're watching these guys be thumpers. You see Mike Hughes in the pocket of Xavier Legette running on a go route, and he's right in his pocket and not giving a PI away. Or watching A.J. Terrell, he said after the game he was in cover 3, but I don't know if he's in cover 3. He was chasing
didn't look like cover 3 if he's running across the field with it.
So AJ said, I was like, okay, but the fact that he probably seen that route 1,000 times and have the ability to be able to undercut it and have the confidence to go get it, that's a big-time play for him. Obviously, we've talked about the safeties, we've talked about the guys up front. This is becoming a unit I think Grady said after the game. They're continuing to fine-tune their skills so that they can – when those sacks start to come, it's going to be a floodgate of them, and they're not really concerned about it. So I think this is a unit that shows that they can get after people. They've shown that they're going to force people to go earn it. They're forcing people to make it hard on receivers, backs, whoever it may be. Now, Chuba Hubbard, first half, they had him under wraps. I mean, under wraps, I think he had 11 carries for 36 yards, averaged 3 yards a carry. Second half, he got going now. Yeah. 7 for 56 and averaged 8 yards a carry. So I know that's something they're going to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, we got to limit some of our rush defense. But for entirety, this was a defense that made it hard on Carolina, and when they had to go force it, they went and got it.
Yeah, and a good bit of Chuba's numbers came from one drive, if I'm not mistaken, Shock. They got something going there in the fourth quarter, and they got one drive where they punched it down the field, and Chuba had, I think, 3 runs in there that netted him somewhere between 25 and 30 yards on 3 carries. I looked at the tape. The guys on the interior are doing a much better job from a stout standpoint. Wes nickname, and I got to give Wes Durham credit. He came up with the nickname. The 2 Clemson Tigers, he called them the Tiger Twins. But he had Rukaroro, the young guy, and he got the old guy Grady Jarrett in there. And those 2 guys really did a pretty good job of being stout on the interior. And let's give Nate Landman some credit. Nate comes off of the short-term IR, and he led the team in tackles. And he's the prototypical old-school linebacker, 6'3", 240, 245 pounds. We talked about his ability to come up and stack people, shed them, plug holes, things like that. Now, they still got some work to do there, but I thought there was a marketable improvement in what they did there. And then Raheem talked about, hey, if we can get to a lead, we can change the dynamic of the play calling for the other side. They're going to have to start throwing the football.
Right.
I thought Arnold Ebiketie was extremely active in this game. You go back and look, Ebiketie was around the quarterback a ton. Now, I know everybody we want to get the quarterback on the ground. But Ebiketie affected a number of throws. Talked about Richie Grant getting in his face on that first drive. There were a number of plays that made Dalton make errant throws or force him out of the pocket, which is uncomfortable for him to throw the ball on the move, which netted the interception by A.J. Yeah. You got to give credit where credit's due, and those guys are pressuring the quarterback. Are they getting him on the ground? Not yet. And that's going to be pretty big this weekend facing Geno Smith. But I just think that there's a major progress going that direction. We talk about the progress on offense. There's really good progress on that side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So credit to those guys up front for not necessarily getting to the quarterback, but creating enough havoc to where like you said, it kind of forces them into a one-dimensional offense, and then give our defensive backs, our corners in this game, some credit.
Yeah.
We always talk about the safeties recently with interceptions, but A.J. Terrell and Clark Phillips getting in on the action and getting some interceptions in this game. So before we talk about Seattle, real quick, guys, we talked about it at the beginning. I want to get one comment from each of you. Falcons started last year 3-0 in the division. They finished 3-3. They lost their last 3 divisional games. This is obviously not a divisional game against Seattle, but what does Atlanta have to do this year to change the narrative to where they build on this and they end up staying on top of the division and getting themselves in the postseason? Players, we always want to talk about one game at a time, but in this profession, we can talk about it. What do they need to do to change the narrative this year, Arch?
Well, matchups are matchups, right, Rack? We know each week there's going to be something different. This is going to be a completely different matchup this week than they saw last weekend. But I think that the ability that we've seen over this, what was it, an 8-day period or about 14-day period where you won 3 football games.
Yeah.
The ability to compartmentalize the 3 divisional games, the maturity of the young players are showing to get ready to play on practice and flush everything behind them. I mean, if you were going to get caught up in a game, this would have been the game, Carolina,
Correct,
where you would have played sloppy. I didn't think they played sloppy. I thought Carolina maybe played better than you thought they were going to, and then ultimately Atlanta stepped on them and shoved them aside. But you had 2 emotional wins in your own building in 4 days over 2 division rivals that everybody's talking about are the teams you've got to beat to win the division.
Yep.
You took them out. And then you get ready over a 10-day period, had days off. You could have gone, sat on the couch and ate chips, whatever you want to do. They got ready to play, and they went in and played a solid football game. To me, that's the difference between this team and maybe previous teams, is there's a maturity level that obviously stems from Kirk and Grady and Jake, but it's a young group that's really hungry, and they get ready for that next game. And maybe playing these primetime games early on got them so focused on each and every pod, like you're talking about, each week is different, that it's a different mentality.
I'm glad that you mentioned maturity level because, DJ, in my opinion, this comes down to, how do they change the narrative? How do you end up finishing the season out on a stronger note than in previous years? It comes down to leadership from the coaching staff, leadership from your leaders on the football team, the experienced guys, and then the younger players, as you talked about, buying into every single piece of that, to me, helps change the narrative. But the players are the ones at the end of the day that have to execute to make it all happen.
Which is a great point. And ultimately, we say it all the time. And I think it's a good point to make because at the end of the day, those are the guys who have to go out and do it. And, I think it starts with where your first point was with the coaching staff. And I think it starts with the head man, my man Ron. Every time we hear him talk, everything is so focused on the here and the now. And it's not about what we did last week. We got to move on from that. Yeah, it was a great game, but we got to worry about what's now. And after the ball game, you hear him every week say, all right, who's next? And the focus goes to that. And I think he set such a good example for his players. And we all play this game, and we understand sometimes you take the mantra, you take the attitude, the mood of your head coach, and that's how the players go about it. And I think that's how this team has kind of been assembled under the mood of the head coach. And I think Rod does a good job every single week of keeping these guys focused on what is now. And these guys understand how big of a moment each and every week is. And then it goes to, okay, Rod talks a certain way. Now the players have to speak it, but then you have to go out and, like you mentioned, go execute it.
Yep.
You have to put those words into action. And I think they go do that every single week. And they've done that from practice, taking it to the game, and then you can see it in their execution. And then after that, hey, like you mentioned, 14 days, you got to be able to watch one game, and you got to be able to get ready and go to the next game. I heard Darnell Mooney talk about Kirk sends him freaking voice messages throughout the week. Yeah. And I asked him how long message was. He said, he sends them to me right after the game. The longest one he got was like 11 minutes. And he's talking about things that's happened throughout the ball game.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, the first thing you say is, man, you got a guy that's keeping guys accountable. Yeah, we just won a big game, but guess what? Man, we could have did this even better on that route or this particular series. And he's thinking ahead. So now when your quarterback comes to you and he's saying this kind of stuff, you're like, I got to make sure I'm on my stuff, because if I'm not, guess what? It's going to show in our play. So I'm sure that happens all around the building, happens all from the defensive side as well, from veterans and stuff. So just one small example of how these guys continue to try to fine-tune those skills to get ready. Even Kurt said after the 500 game, everybody kept wanting to talk about it. He's like, yeah, it's great, but, we got to move on. I mean, he used a bold Belichick, quote or whatever it was, and that just tells you that, even your veterans and at that highs, they're still thinking about what's next and how do we get better.
Yeah, just to echo what Shock's saying about what Raheem has done from a building atmosphere and attitude. After the game, I'm fortunate to be in there as the players are coming in and they do their little post-game talk. And Raheem is immediately saying, this is who we are, who's next. I mean, that's exactly the way Shock described it. That's the way he is about, hey, this is a great win, guys. Gives out a couple of game balls. Boom, this is who we are. Who's next? It's like, we're on to Seattle. I mean, that's immediately who he is. And the players have completely sunk their teeth into that. And Cousins and some of these guys, these veteran players that are calling and saying, think about it, I was thinking this on this route, and he's leaving him a message on the way home from the game. I was thinking maybe you're going to shut it down there, and that was my bad. I threw the ball in the wrong spot. It's really good stuff.
Looking to cash in the next time on some missed opportunities from the previous game. So, real quick, guys, the here and now. Let's talk about it. Who's next? Seattle's next. Anybody paying attention? Seattle played on Thursday Night Football last week, so they had a few extra days rest.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of dive into Arch here, who Seattle is right now. They've kind of turned into more of a pass-heavy team. They can score points. Got off to a great start this year, 3-0, and then they lost their last 3 games. So you got to feel like they're in desperation mode coming across the country to play Atlanta at our place, feeling like they want to get back on track. They're going to sling the ball through the air. They can pressure the quarterback. Kind of give the people a little bit of background of what Seattle brings to the table and the challenges it presents for Atlanta.
Well, unless you've had your head under a rock, this is a really good receiving core coming in here. Jackson Smith-Njigba, who you did a lot of his games at Ohio State. Obviously, Tyler Lockett, the veteran. DK Metcalf. You're talking about 3 receivers that can flat go get it. Geno has really settled into his second opportunity. Geno Smith has taken over as the quarterback. He's one of the top passers in the league. They're throwing the football. In fact, their passing offense is number 1 in the NFL right now. They're number 7 in total offense. And that's without really using Kenneth Walker, their really good running back out of Michigan State / Wake Forest, who had a really good year last year. He's been banged up a little bit this year. He missed a couple of games. And they have not given him the ball very much. He touched the ball, I think, 20 times the first game of the year, got banged up. And over the last couple of games since he's been healthy, he's only carried the ball like 10 times. You got to figure they're seeing what we've seen on tape, that you're going to get a little diet of Kenneth Walker running the football, and they're going to test us a little bit. But make no mistake, it's about it. It's like you said, Rack. This is a team that wants to drop and throw it. They've got outstanding wide receivers, and Smith is Geno's in a really good place from an offensive standpoint.
Let me ask you guys this question, not to say that you look forward to people throwing on you, but DJ, if that game plan holds true, if they don't necessarily pound the football like they did last year, and they start throwing it against Atlanta more than they're going to run the football, does it play into Atlanta's favor or not necessarily?
I think this defense is made for either or. And I'll be honest, I think obviously you think about this secondary, you think about the backers, you think about the depth you have up front. I think it works fine either way. They want to run the football or throw it, but you look at their first 6 ball games, their MO has been throwing the rock, and that's who they've been. That's what they're about. The other thing that gives you maybe a little excitement if you're this Falcons defense is Geno's been sacked 19 times. He got sacked 7 times versus the Broncos. That tells you, guess what? And they've given up 3 sacks in 3 other ball games. So that tells you they've had some issues. But obviously, when you're throwing the ball 40-some times every ball game, there's going to be opportunities to get after them. So. If I'm A.J. Terrell, if I'm, Clark Phillips, if I'm, Mike Hughes, I'm licking my chops this week because there's going to be more opportunities for us down the field to make plays. Now, obviously, those three guys who Arch just named are big-time players.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes into this ballgame, the thing that the Falcons have to do best is they got to be able to tackle. They got to be able to tackle. I looked up some numbers. Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba, 146 yards after catch or contact, whatever you want to call it, of his 310 yards. DK Metcalf, 189 yards after catch of his 469 yards. These dudes catch the rock and they're trying to go. Mm-hmm. They're trying to break tackle. They're trying to get to the zone. But if you ask me, like you mentioned, does it give this defense any concern? I wouldn't think so. I think this is a deep unit on the back end that's used to it. They go against Drake London and Kyle and, Mooney, who we've seen put dudes on skates every single week. It's going to be a fun matchup, and these are the games that you look forward to, especially when you know, hey, they coming after you.
I'm going to have you guys give me one or two biggest keys to the game this weekend. I know it's early in the week as we shoot this podcast, Arch. One or two keys to victory for Atlanta to come away with a win on Sunday.
Well, I'll stay where you took us right there. I think you've got to limit the explosive play out of this wide receiver core. Now, if you looked at the Falcons' strength defensively, you'd probably point at the secondary. Even though there was some question marks about the corner, Hughes has played really well, and Clark, when he's gotten his opportunities, has played well as well. Away from A.J. Terrell, you love the two safeties. And Richie Grant's ability to come in and rush the passer or do what he does, it's strength on strength, in my opinion. Our secondary, which is one of the top secondaries in the league as far as against the pass, against their really good wide receiver core and the top passing unit in this. So that's where my eyes would go right away.
Same to you, Shock.
Yeah, I think offensively you got to stick to the script of who you are, which is if they're giving you the run game, you got to enforce it. This is a ball game where if they're throwing all over the yard, maybe possessions are limited. Maybe if you get opportunities to take the football away, you have to do that. But I think this is a ball game where you have to be more balanced than anything. And balance doesn't mean you got to be 50-50. It means you got to be able to run the rock when you need to. You talk about being able to run the ball down near the goal line last week on third down when obviously you're outside of the 4 or 5 yard line and you be able to do it. That's a big deal.
Yep.
And you may look up and say, hey, we got 80 yards rushing, but we got, all these, key third down situations where you pick up, short yardage situations. Those are big in the ball game. So I think continue to take care of the football for one, because you don't want to be in a chase mode in this ball game where they like to throw it all over the yard. But continue to take care of the football, but just take whatever this scenario, this situation of the ball game gives you.
Seattle has turned the ball over a ton, guys.
Yeah.
They're -6 in the giveaway takeaway. Atlanta at 0, which is right in the middle of the National Football League. But to echo what Shock's saying is the run game defense for them is very similar to what you saw last week. And Carolina struggled to stop the run. This is a Seattle team that struggled to stop the run. They're giving up about 145 yards a game.
You guys kind of talked about it. My two quick keys are stop the run, because it's been a little bit of an issue for Atlanta this year as far as defending the run this year. You got to stop the run and make them throw the ball, make them do what they want to do. And then when they throw it, you got to go make plays in the passing game. Got to go make plays. You either got to get after the quarterback, you got to tip passes at the line of scrimmage, you got to take it away. You just talked about the turnover margin. Take the ball away. We've done a good job of it. We saw it last week. We've seen it all season long, all last year with the safeties. Take the football away on defense.
Love that.
All right, that's going to wrap it up here for the Falcons Audible, presented by AT&T. Falcons back at home 1 p.m. on Sunday, hosting Seattle Seahawks as they come across the country.
Are the dogs right for this one this weekend?
Dogs are ready to go barking in Texas.
Shock, you will be there?
Yes, sir.
I will be there. I'm calling the game.
I'll be watching on
radio.
TV, having a couple of cocktails.
I know we're Falcons Audible, but we're going to be heavy in Austin, Texas this week as well. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We appreciate it. We'll be back here same time, same place next week to wrap it all up for you. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Take care.